Ever find yourself wishing you could just talk to AI and get an answer right away? I mean, typing it all out. It's so slow.
Right.
Well, you're in luck. Today, we're diving into Llama Omni. It's some seriously cool research that's going to make AI way more conversational. We've got excerpts from their technical paper, and it's dense.
Yeah.
But luckily, you've got us to break it down and make it make sense.
Yeah.
To help us do that, we've got an AI pro joining us today.
Happy to be here.
So picture this. A future where talking to AI isn't just something you see in movies. Like, you could have your own personal Star Trek computer. Hopefully a little bit less sassy.
And while we're not quite there yet, this Llama Omni research is a big step. Imagine getting instant answers totally hands-free no matter how complicated your question is.
Okay, so right now, most AI is all about the text. Like
Yeah.
ChatGPT, for example. You type a question, you get a typed answer.
Yeah.
Useful, but not exactly revolutionary.
Exactly. And it's a real barrier for some people, like anyone who has difficulty typing or is visually impaired. This research is about making AI accessible for everyone.
And that's where Llama Omni gets really interesting. They're tackling this whole talking to AI thing head on. It's like a universal translator, but for speech and text.
It's a 4-part system. Think of it like this. It's got ears, that's the encoder, a brain, that's the LLM, a voice, the decoder, and then a translator, that's the adapter. That helps the brain and the voice understand each other.
And here's the really cool part. It can generate text and speech at the same time.
You got it. That means you could actually hear the AI start answering before it's even finished typing out the full response.
Whoa. So if the AI is thinking out loud, that's seriously impressive. But how do you even train an AI to sound like a normal person?
That's where it gets really interesting. They actually had to go and build their own data set from scratch.
They couldn't just use any old audio, like my cat meowing in the background. That's not going to be helpful.
Probably not. They needed something that sounded natural, like an actual conversation. So they started with text and rewrote it to sound more natural, with pauses and filler words.
So making it sound less robot, more friend.
Exactly. And then they used a different AI to actually generate responses. But these weren't just your typical chatbot replies. They were concise, engaging, the kind of thing that you would actually say out loud.
So they're teaching an AI to sound human by feeding it examples of humans being human. Clever. But how do you get from text to speech without it sounding like a robot from the 80s?
That was the final step. And they didn't just use any old speech synthesizer. They used something called Cozy Voice to make the AI sound more natural and engaging. And then for the responses, they actually used VITs, which gives it more of that classic clear AI voice.
Cozy voice.
Oh.
Yeah, it's just fun to say. But the main thing is they really went all out in making this data as realistic as possible. The big question is, does it actually work?
It does. They actually used ChatGPT to judge how good Llama Omni's responses were.
Wait. They use one AI to judge a different AI? Isn't that like using Coke to judge how good Pepsi is?
Right. But it kind of makes sense. Who better to judge how good a conversation is than an AI that's designed for conversations?
Okay, I guess that makes sense.
They call this the ChatGPT score. It looks at things like whether the responses actually make sense and are relevant to what you asked, but also how natural and engaging they sound.
So what was the verdict? Did it pass the vibe check?
Totally. Llama Omni consistently scored higher than other speech-language models, both in terms of the actual content of the responses, but also how they sounded. It's not just spitting out facts. It can actually have a conversation that feels surprisingly normal.
Okay, but let's talk about speed for a second. I've had to use some pretty laggy voice assistants before, and it's just not a good look.
This is where Llama Omni really shines. Remember how we talked about how it can generate the text and the speech at the same time? That's key. They managed to get the latency, which is basically just how long it takes the AI to respond, down to 226 milliseconds.
Milliseconds. That's got to be some kind of record, right?
It is incredibly fast, especially compared to other really advanced models, like GPT-4o, for example. That one takes about 320 milliseconds to do the same thing.
Wow. Okay. So we're talking lightning fast responses.
Yeah.
But to get that speed, did they have to sacrifice something else? Did the quality take a hit?
It is a bit of a trade-off. They were experimenting with something called chunk size. It's essentially how much of the response the AI generates before it starts actually speaking. Smaller chunks mean that you get faster responses, but it can make it sound a bit less smooth.
So it's like choosing between a super fast sports car and then a really nice luxury sedan that's a little bit slower.
Yeah, exactly. But here's the really interesting part. Sometimes using the bigger chunks actually led to more errors.
Wait, so bigger chunks equals more errors. That seems kind of backwards.
It is. They think it might be because the part of the model that's responsible for taking the AI's thoughts and turning them into audio, the vocoder, is actually better at handling smaller bits of information. It's like trying to stuff too many clothes into a suitcase at once.
So it's not just about making the AI smart. You got to make sure that its voice can actually keep up. But even with those errors, I'm guessing the overall quality is still pretty good.
For sure. They used a tool called UTMOS to measure how natural the speech sounds. And Llama Omni consistently got really high scores. Plus, don't forget ChatGPT itself gave it a glowing review.
Okay, you've convinced me. This Llama Omni thing sounds like it could be huge. But before we get too ahead of ourselves and start dreaming about all the cool ways that we could talk to our AI buddies, let's talk about practicality for a sec. How long does it actually take to generate these responses? Because if I'm sitting here waiting like 5 minutes to get an answer, it kind of defeats the purpose of being able to talk to it in the first place.
That's a great point. That's actually another area where Llama Omni really excels. They compared how long it takes to process everything to other models like Speech GPT, for example.
Yeah.
That one uses a more traditional approach where it generates the text first and then generates the speech.
So it's like if you were writing out a letter by hand.
Yeah.
And then had to read it out loud afterwards versus just saying it naturally.
Exactly. And you can imagine how much longer that would take. With Speech GPT, going from speech to speech takes about 6 times longer than just going from speech to text.
Wow. That's a huge difference.
Right. But with Llama Omni, because it's generating the text and speech at the same time, the processing time only increases by about 1.28 times when you want to add speech. It's crazy efficient.
So it's not just faster in terms of how quickly it responds to you. It's also faster at processing information overall. This AI is like firing on all cylinders.
It is. And that speed opens up so many possibilities. Imagine real-time translation that actually works, voice assistants that can keep up with a conversation, even things like creative tools where you can just talk to your computer and it'll help you write a song or a screenplay or something.
Okay, now you're just making me wish this tech was available like right now.
Oh, I know, right? But honestly, what's really exciting about all of this is that it's not just about making AI faster or more efficient. It's about making it more human-centered.
I totally agree. It's about making technology that works for us, not the other way around.
Exactly. And Llama Omni is a perfect example of that.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. But I want to bring it back to our listeners for a minute. What does all this actually mean for them, this Llama Omni thing? It's about way more than just talking to our phones, right?
Oh, absolutely. This is about fundamentally changing how we interact with technology. Think about someone who can't easily type, for example.
Yeah.
This could be totally life-changing for them.
Yeah, it's about giving everyone a voice.
Exactly. And what about communication in general? Real-time translation that actually sounds natural. We could break down language barriers all over the world.
It's like that thing in Star Trek. But you don't need the little device.
Right.
And then there's the whole creativity thing we were talking about earlier. Imagine just talking to your computer. And it helps you write a song.
Yeah.
Or a whole screenplay.
Right. It's pretty amazing. This technology could really unlock a lot of creative potential. Make it easier for people to express themselves and share their ideas.
Like having a brainstorming partner that's available 24/7. Okay, so we've reached the end of our Llama Omni deep dive. What's the one big thing you want our listeners to take away from all of this?
You know, what really excites me about all this is how it's pushing the boundaries of what we thought AI could do. It's not just about making it faster, more efficient anymore. It's about making AI more intuitive, more human. Imagine a world where interacting with AI is as natural as just talking to another person.
Yeah, like in those sci-fi movies where the line between human and machine kind of starts to disappear. Exciting, but also a little creepy.
Definitely something to think about. But for now, it seems like we're headed towards a future where technology is more accessible, more intuitive, and maybe even a little bit more human.
And on that note,
Yeah.
we'll leave you with this. Imagine a world where AI understands not just your words, but your tone of voice, your emotions, even your unspoken thoughts. What would that world look like? What would that mean for you? Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.